Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Behind Marketing Lines. I'm your host, Zishan, and today we are discussing e-commerce. I have my guest, Alex Dirdin, with me. Alex,
Hi,
thank you.
Zishan. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for taking time out. I've written a very comprehensive introduction for Alex here. I think I need to read it out loud. Today we have Alex, who makes e-commerce look way cooler than spreadsheets and shipping labels. When I met him and he told me that I work for e-commerce, I was like, okay, e-commerce can be cool as well. Alex is the director of e-commerce at RSA Global, where he's basically bridging the gap between digital ambition and operations, like literally. I hope I'm correct here.
That's well said, absolutely.
Perfect. And he's led teams, of course, launched strategies, and probably settled more sales versus marketing debates than most of us care to admit. Because I'm not sure if you listened to a few of my previous podcasts, but we had that heated debate, sales versus marketing. And I'm pretty sure you have been there too, right?
Yes, I did listen to that, and I'm sure I can contribute something too.
Awesome. From ClickFunnels to freight lanes, he's seen how brand, tech, and logistics collide and somehow make it all work. Let's unpack the journey, the lessons, and the behind the scenes of building real impact in the commerce world. Once again, thank you very much, Alex, for taking time out.
Thank you, Zishan.
Awesome. So, the first question, which is if your career was a Netflix series, what would it be called and what would be the opening scene?
Right, starting with the hard questions right from the get-go. I like it. Okay, I think the show should be called Pioneers.
Okay.
And just picture this. Imagine the very first frame is a spaceship somewhere in outer space traveling to the uncharted lands. And on board this spaceship, there are many people, not only myself, but maybe a dozen more. And then cut to something happening on the spaceship. Something goes catastrophically wrong, like an explosion or the power failure. So each one of those protagonists of this particular series has this power entrance. They say a phrase that characterizes them, and then we all get together to the mess room or to the ship bridge, and we start solving these problems. But that probably would be the show I would like to watch about myself.
Yeah, and I'm getting excited as well. So, what's your punchline for that show? What's your power phrase?
Oh, just another day on the job.
Right. So, and what pulled you into e-commerce? Because you're quite a storyteller, right?
Yeah, well, look, it was completely by accident. Actually, my journey into particularly e-commerce started as part of marketing department. Would you believe it or not? And I
Interesting.
don't have it on my LinkedIn or any other on my
I was
CVs.
digging, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
all
well,
right,
my
spill the
my
beans.
my friend who was a marketing director back then, he was harboring the idea of going international with a particular company he was with.
Right.
It was 14 years ago. And he invited me to join. He said, there is no guarantee that we will succeed. You're part of one department technically, but we will be doing international business development and product development in e-commerce.
Right.
And he wanted me just to join because I spoke foreign languages and I was kind of well-traveled back then. And I'm like, okay, I'll go and I'll do that. So happened by accident, and then I got pulled in, and I really, really loved my industry because all the brands I could read in newspapers or magazines like eBay's, Amazon's, Inditex's, Alibaba's of the world, I was privileged to work with all of them. So
Awesome.
it worked out pretty well for me in the end.
That's great. Okay, so I've seen that you have worked across industries, right? So what's that one thing that you have carried with you, no matter the sector?
Well, technically, my forte is building something from scratch. I am not a functional director per se. I've been always creating corporate ventures, entrepreneurs within organizations. So driving long-term corporate value by incubating something new, which could be a new product, new partnership, new business unit. This was something that I always did, kind of like a startup within an organization. So some of the same, rules and same playbooks, they all apply no matter what I do, no matter where I worked in, because I had to incubate that something from the get-go. But another story, actually, my very first job was I was a sailor on board a ship. I was
Okay.
part of the admin crew, and it was a cruise liner with a lot of tourists on board. And right it was a summer job. I was like maybe teen years back then. And I remember my strong desire wanting to quit because I couldn't just cope with it all. I remember talking to my mom, and she said, "Of course you can. You can quit. You can go back home. We'll still love you. We'll still be proud of you no matter what. But how would you feel about yourself?" Unfortunately, that instilled in me the sense of relentlessness. I did not back down. I did not quit. So relentlessness, I think the idea to learn very, very quickly and to adapt from this corporate venture stuff is something that I bring everywhere with me, no matter where I am at.
Right. And I'm just curious. So you ever started any marketing departments by any chance as well? Or were you part of any marketing departments being raised?
No, I was not, but I was always a part of. I don't usually almost distinguish always between marketing, sales, and business development somehow.
Right.
To me, it's all one and the same kind of department function that was responsible for communicating between internal environment of the organization and an external one. For example, regardless where you work, logistics, e-commerce, to me, it's still the same function that I see of marketing. It's almost like those people, they are the masters of this two-way street, or maybe like better said, multi-lane highway between the inner structure of the organization and the wider world. Sales guys, they obsess about customers' problems. Business development guys, I would think about trends and opportunities in the future. And marketing, to me, are the guys that should obsess about information and storytelling.
100%. Perfect. So, and since most of the audience that listen to this podcast are aspiring marketers, some of them are already in the field. So, for them, like, how is it? How is the marketing function within the e-commerce, especially the B2B e-commerce section?
Yeah, to us, basically, industry authority is everything. And how you position yourself and brand reputation, it's very hard then to change it and change the perception. So I would say, because it's very easy for us for something to go wrong, usually the more downstream you are in the e-commerce value chain, the more to blame you are. Everybody kind of sees your failures. They don't
Of
see the
course.
failures upstream that often. It is very important not to lose that brand reputation and industry authority. And I think marketing, especially in our field, and especially in kind of B2B field, is always reliant on that. It's all about, of course, storytelling, perception, but that particular, the old word reputation is something that, you should live and breathe by, because even though the market is so big in terms of trillions of dollars, it's kind of a small village, like, because you all work with the same biggest agents across the world, and
Right.
they know about you, so you'd better walk the talk.
Awesome. It sounds very performance heavy, right? So how do you, you know, keep a balance between the creative side of marketing and the operation side of marketing?
Good question. I think you almost treat the creative side of marketing like a hypothesis that needs to be tested.
Okay.
And the operational side is exactly your kind of sandbox where you can test your ideas. And this sandbox involves customers, it involves these interactions. I live and breathe by feedback loops and haptic feedback. I like to receive feedback very quickly. And to me, this is kind of like the best interaction I've seen. So set up the feedback loop and understand how it works, and then change and always iterate, and iterate. That's how you could bridge the gap between the creative side and operational side.
Awesome. I think and that can be applicable to any industry, right? Not just B2B e-commerce.
Well, most probably you are the best person to assess that. I mean, it's always this approach worked for me, but come to think of that, probably it is kind of universal. Yes.
Right. I mean, and apart from like where you work today, uh, a similar named company exists in the insurance side of.
Used to they just renamed themselves.
Yeah, lucky for you. But what's one other misconception people have about, the digital logistics?
I would say not everybody realizes how brutal it is out there. And I'm talking about the market itself. Obviously, e-commerce has been growing at significant CAGR in various places and various segments of our planet at double-digit CAGR for the past years. And it attracted a lot of players, like, usually, like it usually happens. So there are a lot of players in this particular value chain, and somehow the only product that we have became commoditized. So it's only about the price because the guy next door probably selling something exactly the same as you are selling. So the idea to find leverages either within this value chain or for us, our leverage now that in the corporate venture that I'm building now is technology. This is the hardest part to find, identify, and build upon because come to think of it, even though if the industry is growing itself, the share of logistics there is shrinking because a lot of big industry players like marketplaces, they tend to have everything in-house.
Right.
So the overall pie is growing, but the slices for independent logistics players, 3PL players, last mile delivery agents, express companies, is actually shrinking. So it is not what a lot of people realize.
Right. And since this is mostly about, marketing and what happens behind the marketing lines, right? And you must have been part of many campaigns. So do you remember from the past or the current place where you work, any campaign, any, marketing campaigns you guys were working on where everything just clicked, and it was like, okay, probably it was built this way and it was supposed to happen this way.
Yeah, I remember one campaign, and probably for you it might sound very simplistic and something which is very, very basic. But our clients loved it. I mean, the brands that we work with absolutely loved it. So picture this: it's an express company that has like big federal network, and
Okay.
every day, this express company delivers tens of thousands of documents, right,
Wow.
or maybe I don't even know what the actual number was. And so on all these envelopes that are sent across the country, and back then, DocuSign or something like that was not a thing, and you had to have everything in ink and paper,
Right.
cross border or within the country. I'm still referring to my example like almost 10 to 15 years ago.
Right.
So the idea was, how about we print our international clients' campaign on the back of our envelopes, and we get the code, like promo code, for people to use this, so that we can increase their brand awareness, increase their presence. To us, it cost almost nothing. To the brand, it's just another promo code where we could potentially track what the uptick was. I'm not even sure it was enough to move the needle to increase the sales, but it definitely increased the awareness. And because we did it almost for free for the brands, and it lasted for months and months, they were particularly happy that we were not just a guy that does delivery from A to B, but we were actively trying to make them succeed. And I think this is also what these kind of campaigns, in our case, were about, that we are in this together because my client's success is also my success. And it was reflected in this very simplistic and basic thing as just, hey, we'll print your logo, we'll print your promo campaigns on the stuff that we deliver anyway. And yeah, it was very positively received and everything just clicked, as you said.
Honestly, I love it because I've worked with many brands, over past couple of years. And this is one of the things that I still recommend a lot of companies who do
Oh.
not have a lot of, analytics power to consume, right?
Hmm.
And I tell them this is a simplistic way. You put a promo code and in this way you'll be able to track so it's basically kind of attribution.
Correct.
You can attribute to where this particular lead or sale came from, right? And I think that idea was fantastic, and that too like 15 years ago. Bravo. I think that was a good one.
Thank you.
And okay, back to the sales versus
Mm.
marketing thingy we were talking about earlier. So you sat on, you were closer to both sides, and you have always been. Now you're director of e-commerce. You speak to both marketing teams and the sales teams. So what's a moment when sales and marketing, I mean, in your career, they were completely misaligned, and was there a time when you were able to fix it?
Unfortunately, what I have observed, it happens more often than not. Yeah. And I think this is largely due to this kind of functional thinking and silo thinking. Of course, it's very easy for us, again, referencing internal and external environment, right? In the internal environment, it's very easy for people to divide everything by functional leaders. But at the borders, at the fringes of these domains, this is where actually the misalignment happens and the information flow gets a bit stuck. So all this silo thinking doesn't really help. I noticed time and time again when the marketing messaging and the sales messaging was misaligned. The USPs were not clearly, all the, classic stuff. So I thought I could use something from the product approach, and I mean product like the tech companies do that.
Right.
They usually break the teams in the product-led environments into acquisition and retention. And I thought, hey, how about I do the same for the kind of legacy, old school industry.
Right.
So even in the department where I had now, we do not have sales or marketing. We have the acquisition team, we have the retention team.
Oh, awesome.
An acquisition team needs to think in terms of how do I meet the customer, in which channels do I meet them, how do I talk to them, what I do, then close the sale and off you go. And retention thinks about, okay, the quality, the experience, and so on and so forth. And I think this helps think slightly differently because your client do not perceive you as this particular department or that particular department. If you think about their kind of experience, how they interact with your organization, it's sliced differently, almost horizontally, compared to the vertical functions. And I think you need to do something to reflect that and help them, work with you in a way which is convenient for them. And I think that particular approach that I appropriated from the tech companies is working.
And I think that makes sense as well because marketing, sales, customer experience, customer service, they don't need to sit in silos, right? Because if they're not talking to each other and if they're not part of the larger group and the bigger team or the brand itself, then it wouldn't work for anybody, right?
No, no,
So
absolutely.
I think I reckon what you're saying. And so I was about to ask you if marketing and sales were roommates, what would be their fight about? But I think I would ask you if acquisition and retention were roommates, what would their fight be about and who would win?
Okay, interesting. Well, I think it's all about impact, to be honest. We all know the common adage now that retention is the new acquisition because it's cheaper to retain a customer. That is absolutely true. So I think a bit of a power play on effort and impact would be there. But ultimately both of them should win, and I would even say no, not both of them. Customer should win because this strife between various functions should always propel yourselves to be better and become better. So if you have this healthy conflict within or between those teams, hey, you should have onboarded the client better. Hey, you should have retained the client better. I spent a lot of time working on this particular lead, but it didn't work out in the end. But it did not because we were not ready. All this thing eventually, I think, helps us get better because even negative feedback, and I think we only grow by negative feedback, right?
Agreed.
Otherwise, there's no signals for you to change,
True.
should be taken into what I said before, into this feedback loop. And I think what changed for me over the course of my career, and I started more in the sales way, sales business development way, every single time I lost a customer, I almost like lost my soul. It hurt me personally, because I was hyper responsible for every single one. And I think it worked to me up to a point, because now I think more about categories. Yeah, if you lose one customer, that is just a signal to see what we're doing wrong and how we get better so that we, the second or the third, we do not lose them. So to me, it's now more of a optimization game rather than a personal stake, and I like it more that way.
Makes sense. Now I'll move to the personal branding side of things a little. So your online presence is calm, insightful, and intentional. How does that reflect who you are at work?
I think it largely reflects who I am at work. The only things I'm not showing yet to this online presence of mine is that I bring a lot of sense of humor to my daily interactions.
Right.
And I'm actually very intense. I'm very intense. I'm very passionate about what I do. I love my industry, and I love creating, startups and ventures from scratch. This is what drives me. But my representation is true in a way that I do not let my emotions control me, almost never. I think when you have the knee-jerk reaction or emotional response to all the bad things that happen, for example, when somebody on the team comes to you with bad news, or something is wrong with the client, if you act like that as a leader and as a person, it kind of instills the wrong comprehension from the people. Like they should rather not bother you with bad news, and I think that's completely the wrong way to do it. So I'm trying to always smile and say, yeah, just hit me up and tell me what it is. So it is more calm because to me, again, it's just a very interesting problem that I can hone my skills at solving rather than absolutely like life or death situation.
Awesome. So it's basically similar both online
Very,
and
very
offline,
similar. I'm just toning the humor down.
right? And what's your take on personal branding in the B2B world? Is it a must, a bonus, or do you think it's a distraction?
A good question. Sometimes I wonder that myself, to be honest. But I have lately decided it's mostly a bonus, and I'll tell you why. There were two stories that happened to me like over the past month. I was at a social gathering here, and I got introduced to a girl, and she said who she was. By the way, she was the ex-CPO of Platinum List. She was amazing, and I was following her on LinkedIn for months before that. I loved her content. And she said, "Yeah, this is who I am. This is me." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know you." I almost turned into, a fan of a rock star band. I'm like, "I know you. I follow your posts. I like what you're doing." And she was a bit taken aback with that. That's all because she had her social media presence and her own personal brand, and I think it works perfectly. And then another story is I just met a very prominent guy in the international aviation industry just yesterday, and is almost non-existent on social media, but his presence in the industry is known. I've known of him before I met him, and I think this particular reputation also works for him too. So to me, if you walk the talk, if you really have the authority in what you do, this is the most important thing. And active social media presence is a bonus, but not a must.
Right. And if someone was to shadow you for a week, what would they be surprised to learn about your approach to humor,
Yeah.
marketing, customer
Okay.
experience?
Okay. Well, I think this is something that has to do with my creative self because I don't always show yet, but actually I come from a family of very like creative people. What I mean by that is my grandfather was a choreographer and ballet
Wow.
master, and he has established his own, together with his friend, established a dance ensemble, which is still prominent. My grandmother, she was like a theater director.
Awesome.
She was directing like
Okay.
some plays, and my mother was a musician. So, and I am in e-commerce and business development and international business. But sometimes that side still, seeps through me, and this is what people probably would not be expecting for me to say that. Sometimes I yearn for this more creative and artish approach to what I do.
I was about to ask you if e-commerce was banned tomorrow, what job would you be doing? But now I think I know,
Yeah, like
right?
a stage
I'll
actor, like a
find you
theater actor.
exactly.
Possibly, possibly. But apart from that, uh, I'm very much fascinated by the field where technology interacts with the real world, where almost like artificial meets real. This is why I love it about e-commerce. You click on the website, but you get stuff delivered to your door. So any other industry where the same interaction, where there is application actively improving human life, or like devices, smart devices, I'm very much captivated by that field. Like maybe even gaming industry, like video gaming, and how it also can, interact with the real life and real life interactions. I love that it's happening more and more. So yeah, probably either one of those two things.
Right. So, do you love video games a lot? Because the first time I met you, you were actually sitting next to a guy who worked in the same industry and you guys were having a chat about it.
Yeah, I mean, I do like it. It kind of shaped my childhood, and
Right.
I think it also kind of helped me a lot to spend the pastime better than some of the other counterparts did. Yeah, so I quite like that. I'm fascinated by how quickly it becomes an art. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. Because before it was kind of shunned, and you couldn't even talk about it on podcast, right? But now there are more and more works that really you could be likened to cinema, yeah, to a movie. And this is what captivates me more and more. And I'm watching what's happening in the industry because I'm passionate about it, and also I believe it has real huge also CAGR potential in the coming years.
Right. So, if you could live in a video game, which video game that would be?
Oh, wow. Look, it's all about the setting, right? It's all about the setting. What speaks to me are two time periods. The first one I told you, it's the future, deep space exploration, pioneering, and the other one is ancient Greece. So
Right.
probably somewhere like if the game is set in either one of those time periods, that's a place I would like to be living in the virtual world.
Awesome. So you've worked with a lot of marketers in your career so far. So how do you see the future of marketing? Uh, in future, the marketers would need to be part dash, part dash. So what would be the two words that you would fill in?
Oh, I am also, I think you would agree with me, and I'll be a bit boring in this one, but marketing is part science, part art, right? So that's what you need to be. You need to be data driven, but you almost need to be kind of a counselor or a therapist to understand emotion, to tell the stories.
That is
So
correct.
that perfect blend that you could argue can be applicable to almost anything that we do. I think definitely that's what a good marketer has to embody, right? They have to have analytical mind, but also at the same time have, heart and flames to be able to spin those emotional stories.
100%. I think in 1960s and 50s, the Mad Men era, I think it was more art than
Right.
science. But I think with the advent and the social media coming up and the internet and these analytic tools, and now we can even know that how many cars are passing by one particular billboard, right? Back in the
Yep.
day, it was just an awareness that we were doing. So I love the answer. Part science, part art, of course. Perfect. And that brings me to the question. If your life was a marketing campaign, what would the tagline be?
Oh, let's try to unpick this one. Could be from idea to impact without losing sanity. That's the one.
Okay, okay. All right. That's pretty dope and intense. I think we'll have to decode that.
Yeah, because kind of the life of incubating ventures inside companies is an intense one. It's a roller coaster of emotions. It's highs and lows. It's summits and pitfalls. It's like trauma and accomplishments all in the same, bottle, right? And you need to drink this cocktail almost every day. But I think this is what almost every single creator, is going through in his life. I mean, any startup founder, any corporate venture builder, and any other, we talked about artists, we talked about actors. Every creative person has to deal with, and I think the idea of becoming resilient enough to move forward, but at the same time resilient enough to be uh, a fan of your idea so that idea can make an impact, but at the same time flexible enough, to be able to pivot. This is where it's all coming about, and of course on this arduous journey that we all have in our different careers, regardless of what we do, but in this one, it is very much exacerbated. We really need to keep our wits about us. It's very hard. It's very common for people to like burn out, start doubting themselves, and I mean I had all this. So this is why this if a tagline could motivate me and keep me going as well as reflect on what I've done, that would be it.
Perfect. You used the word burnout, and I think I'm going to pick on that.
Sure.
So, for the people listening to this podcast, right, and especially in this hyper connected world, if someone is burnt out, what should they do? What's your advice to, the aspiring marketers or the aspiring e-commerce practitioners out there who are just graduating and, it's overwhelming for them because they know they didn't study what's going to hit them in the industry, right?
Mm.
So, what would be your advice on dealing with burnout?
Look, I think burnout now happens just because our synapses are firing at an alarming rate. We're bombarded with information. So just my advice would be you have to slow down. This is a signal where you just have to slow down. You have to if anything happens in the world, you will know about. If it's really important, you would know about that. So you don't need to be, again, standard things. Don't need to be doom scrolling. Don't need to be trying to live to be hinged on all this piece of information that flies around because now I think filtering the wrong information and the one which is wrong for you, which is the white noise, it's the most important. So the moment you feel like you're being overwhelmed, I think there's something that worked for me. Is just you just slow down. You almost go out, be in nature actually. Try to see the leaves moving. Try to see the water flowing. You have to reconnect to your human self because this ultimate pursuit of accolades, accomplishments, and success we're all relentlessly doing now in the modern world, even more and more intense, sometimes just leaves a question of what are you sacrificing for this, and is the sacrifice worth it? So yeah, I think slowing down is just trying to reconnect with your true self and with nature because we all come as people from nature, right? I think that's the most important thing.
Perfect. And you have a very decorated career so far. When I look at your LinkedIn, you've been places. You've worked in several different industries. So, if you were to give Alex an advice, who was the Alex 10 years ago, what would that advice be?
I think it's pretty much very much reflective of what we just discussed. Yeah, it's very much important. These are the same things. I think these questions of is the sacrifice worth it? Is this ultimate pursuit worth it? Is something that I would need to educate the Alex like of 10 years ago. And I would probably say that look, while being busy in life, don't forget living. I heard it somewhere from a colleague, from a friend, and I think that's exactly the phrase that I should have echoed in myself. Because on this journey, souls have been departed from this world and never said proper goodbye to. People that have been close to me have been hurt because I was paying more attention and tunnel vision to career and achievements. And sometimes, you need to understand that ultimately, yeah, what's it at the end, right? What is this endless pursuit about? And I think this endless pursuit is about finding yourself and reconnecting with your true self, regardless of what you do, right? Because I really love what I'm doing. I don't distinguish my work life from my personal life. There is no work-life balance because I love what I'm doing. Can do it anywhere and everywhere and anytime. But really finding that particular balance is important. So again, while being busy, just don't forget that, you're living, you have people around you, and it's always all about people.
Right. And you must have worked with many marketers during this career as well, right? So, what are some of the good things or the positive things you've seen in some of the marketers you've worked with so that, the future marketers who are listening to this should work on them, polish them if they already have them, so that they are future ready?
Right. Look, I think the hardest part to nail in marketing and sales is really, really understanding who's your ideal customer and finding this ideal customer profile. Yeah, again, I am not saying something that maybe you guys don't know on this. So if you really, really put yourself in the customer shoes, yeah. If you utilize various frameworks that help you retrace what is it that people want, like jobs to be done or something, then you will be able in a better position to understand what kind of value you're creating. So to me, marketing and messaging and storytelling, it's all about value creation. And you really, really need to determine what this value is. And it can be multidimensional. What I mean by that is that in marketing, to me, there always exists three dimensions, right? The first one, you're marketing your product to your customers. That's one package that you need to pack what you're doing into. Second one is you're packaging this for your shareholders, investors, for the stakeholders in your business. They also need to understand what's happening, but you also need to be a storyteller to say that. And the third thing, you actually, when you're in the business or you're heading a department, you need to be marketing your own department to the people that work in the organization, right? Uh, and actually, if you're running a company, you need to be marketing your own company also to your own people, because how they perceive it, how market perceives it, it's very important that there is no imbalances there too. So even people that do not have a title marketer, right, in their job titles, if come to think of that, we all should be understanding two things: how we deliver value and what kind of story we're telling. And I think this is something that almost in this functional, as I said before, division almost gets omitted, which is why I think the marketers of the future and people who want to specialize in this, if they zoom in on this part, they could really make an impact.
No, 100%. I think internal marketing is really important. And if we're able to position our brand, our offerings to the people who work for us, then I think it would be easier to sell it outside as well.
Yeah, because come to think, so much depends on them, on those unsung heroes, right? Because a guy somewhere in operations could do so much damage to the brand and reputation that you can never undo. Or you could undo, but it would
True.
take a lot of money and effort. So it would be easier for you to understand what drives them, what stories they like. And there's a great story that I always like telling, that when a janitor at Cape Canaveral was asked, what is he doing? He's saying, I'm launching people into space, because he feels the same sense
I
of
love it.
belonging to the particular mission, and he understands how his job contributes to the overall job. I love it too, and this is one of my mottos as well. I need to make sure that people are launching people into space.
Awesome. It's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's how it should be at all the organizations, right? Of course, customer at the heart of everything, but whatever we are doing, everyone should own that. If you're selling insurance or if you're selling balloons per se, so everybody needs to be working toward, the same motto, right? One team, one goal kind of a situation.
Absolutely. I think we and a lot of people know what to do. Hardest part, of course, is the execution. How you do that, how you really, understand and make sure what makes people tick, what could be a good story. This is where the kind of art comes into, right, into play, and science as well. But yes, the goals, I think the goalposts are not moved. It's exactly as you and I are saying. Execution is key here.
Awesome. Any questions for the marketers, the marketing industry that you would want answered?
Absolutely. Like, hey guys, how do you view AI, right? How do you, that's on everybody's mind. How do you make sure that we don't dish out a lot of content that is created by AI and then consumed by AI? How do we make sure we don't create those artificial walls of white noise and and irrelevant information out there in the field? How would it work for you guys?
100%. I think that's a great question. And that's what I keep on telling my peers as well in the industry, that now we need to, pick and choose what we are creating, because we need to create what humans can consume, right? Because it's not going to be bots sitting on the other end consuming that
Yeah,
content. So I think that is going to be the next big question for the marketing industry, that, uh, okay, you also need to take a break, embrace the new AIs and algorithms and analytic tools and all that stuff coming in, but then again understand that you're going to create it for humans, right?
absolutely.
So don't create white noise, as you mentioned, but create content that's meaningful and people would want to come back to it or understand it.
Absolutely. A lot of people now search for companies not on Google, for example, but on ChatGPT and other LLMs, right? So the technical question is, how do I become one of the, search answers that LLM gives out? But the second time is exactly not to lose sight that everything is dependent on human interaction only. It's not companies doing businesses. It's not huge deals being signed. It's not political things that happen. Everything happens in interaction of human to human, and we must not lose sight of that, regardless of the industry, but especially in marketing.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the answer to your question, where you mentioned that, how do we rank better on the GPTs now? I think 8 out of 10 people on my LinkedIn can answer that question, because that's what people are pitching me now. That, okay, the era of SEO is over, and, now it's the era where you need to rank better on the GPTs.
Hmm.
So I think we can get answer from like at least 8 different people if you want to. Perfect, Alex. I think it was fantastic. Thank you very much. It was very, insightful conversation with you, and I thank you very much for, taking time out and for doing this. And I hope that we'll be inviting you again during season 3 as well.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.